report that you called him up and said, as a friend, I will advise you in this situation after June 23 to, in response to his question, not make it a workers' comp claim.
No, absolutely not. First of all, I would never call him and enter anything. If I was asking anything, enter it as a friendship thing. I'm not going to jeopardize that. I don't need that. It doesn't. Work is work, friend is friend, and I've learned after 17 years of doing this and my time in the Marine Corps in combat, you got to keep things separate, and I would never do that.
And you would have no concern regarding your own employment records or compensation or bonus or anything about having or not having a lost time work injury.
No. I've reported hundreds of injuries in my career.
But isn't it true, Mr. Brown, that you have also, in cases other than Mr. Curley's, discouraged the pursuit of a workers' comp claim?
Objection.
What's the don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Lex, the question itself just lacks foundation, excuses, evidence. You object to his argument as well.
Well, in any event, it sounds like the witness didn't understand the question, so
okay.
You might want to rephrase it.
Mr. Brown, do you recall a lady by the name of Holly Sessions?
I do.
Isn't it true that after she had a finger crush injury, you directed that she not file a workers' comp claim about that?
Objection, no.
Absolutely not. Took her to the hospital myself, called it in myself that day. Because I was in the center when it happened. She pressed her finger on the rollers. I was actually in town getting ready to leave town. My wife was with me, and I took her to our doctor to be seen.
What do you mean when you say our doctor? Who's that?
United Parcel Services doctor.
And she continued with a claim for workers' compensation?
Again, objection, Judge. There's no relevance to this line of questioning. Now we're getting into like propensity evidence. And Mr. Fraser's, I don't know what he's trying to prove in relation to this case.
Overruled. I think he's trying to establish that the witness may have had some incentive to minimize claimant's claim, and that may have caused him to take certain action. And I think the witness is responding, so overruled.
So, Mr. Brown, if someone brings a note of medical restrictions to their supervisor at UPS Alamosa, what happens then?
They don't work, or they work if they're hurt out late from work. They don't work.
And
now, sometimes they make exceptions. If we can work with them within their restrictions, then that's what happens.
so if someone had a 15-pound lifting restriction, how would that be accommodated?
You could put a part-time person on the car with them, so they're not lifting it off. All they're doing is driving.
would performing preloader duties fit within a 15-pound lifting restriction?
No. Unless they were just clerking. And if they need help with packages, I would say 80% of the packages we handle are less than 15 pounds.
Are packages separated by weight in your facility?
Yeah, the weight's right on them.
But I'm wondering, in the context of modified duty, would it be possible to have a preloader deal with only very light objects?
They could sort the belt, which is just a push-pull. There's no lifting involved. Or, like I said, they could clerk packages. If we have a cart in the mornings that comes in, that is completely full of bad addresses, so they can go over on the computer and pull things up like that.
But would it be appropriate for someone with a medical restriction to load a truck or unload a truck?
I'm going to object now on relevance. I mean, if he's asking this as a series of hypothetical questions, that's fine. But he's not asking as it pertains to Mr. Curley's case, Judge. Where he's asking just a series of hypothetical questions generally about UPS policy and procedure. Not about how Mr. Curley's restrictions applied in this case to what he was doing.
Mr. Frazier.
Would Mr. Sanchez have had authority to provide modified duty to Mr. Curley?
You'd have to speak to Mr. Sanchez about that. I 100%, like I said earlier in this conversation, I trust his judgment, and if he's got somebody that he can keep within restrictions, if that's his choice, then that's what he would do. I mean, but if that's up to him, I don't know anything about that.
If someone looked at the schedule for start times at UPS in Alamosa in May of 2016, and there was a MED after their name, what would that mean?
I'm going to object to speculation, again, hypothetical. You can ask
I have no idea
MED
what you're talking about.
But you were
Well,
the...
hold on. In any event, I think it's reasonable for him to ask the manager if he knows what a code might mean, but I think he just said that he doesn't. So, next question.
Nothing further.
Do you have any cross-examination?
Just very briefly. Mr. Brown, how are you, sir?
Good.
I only have a few questions for you.
Okay.
Hang on for one moment, if you wouldn't mind. Now, please walk us through what UPS's policy is regarding reporting and investigating workers' compensation injuries.
Okay. If an employee is injured on their shift, their responsibility is most of the time report that injury on that shift before they leave. And second case is within 24 hours. Typically, we talk about, earlier I spoke about PCM. We PCM that constantly. If you're injured and you get hurt, we need to know about it on the spot before you leave so that we can get to the facts while everything's fresh and investigate it and come up with a prevention plan.
How serious does UPS take safety in workers' compensation?
UPS and the railroad, probably the top two safety industries in the United States.
And do you continuously reinforce safety to your employees?
Every day I have to give a safety PCM every single day, or it's given by my part-time supers if I'm not in the operation.
Now, in your facility, we've talked about Jacob Sanchez as a supervisor. Are there other supervisors that work in that facility that are available to report workers' compensation claims?
Yes.
How many?
That facility I had 1, 2, 3, for